I see a lot of faces here that have been through a lot of these meetings over the years for these boundary changes and so forth, and they're very important, and paying this kind of attention to it is the reason we have the quality neighborhood we do, because we stay on top of things, and this kind of turn just shows that. So we appreciate you guys coming out. We'll be passing the offering plate in just a few minutes, so because those of you that haven't paid your dues, we're going to get that taken care of and out of the way, that way you don't have to worry about it in January. But real quick, we originally had tonight's meeting scheduled with the people from the Bat Conservation Society. If some of you may remember 7 or 8 years ago, we had them come out. It was a really great program. They showed us all about bats and talked about our McNeil Bat Bridge and how it was built specifically for bats and so forth. They're going to be coming to next month's meeting. So, and they are going to bring a live bat with them. We get to pet the bat. No, really, we don't get to pet the bat, but they will have a live bat with them. So with that, before I turn it over, any quick questions, neighborhood, not boundary related, that I need to hit for anybody real quick? I'm sure most of you are here for that. Nothing. Okay, next month will be our last meeting of the year. As you know, we take a break in November and December because of the holidays, and then we pick it back up in January. So I hope we see you next month. Ryan, I'm going to turn over to Ryan McGahey and Chad Valiska. They're going to run the show tonight.
Hey everybody, thank you all so much for coming out. It's a bigger crowd than usual than we have at Neighborhood Association meetings, but it's good to see the swell of support that we have out here. Some of you may not know me. My name is Ryan McGahey. I'm a lifelong Round Rock West resident. I went to Deepwood Elementary, went to Chisholm Trail Middle School, went to Round Rock High School, and as I graduate, we are trying to really kind of educate tonight of what this program or what this proposal is. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of get everybody up to speed of the proposal that's been given to the board by the demographer, so everybody can understand exactly what we're looking at. Beyond that, we're going to discuss, we brought in a principal from a Round Rock ISD school. She's a principal at a Title I school. We all know that that's kind of the hot and heavy topic with all this boundary change. So we want to bring her in to help discuss with us a little bit about Title I, help alleviate some concerns and misconceptions, but also, you know, kind of give us the facts about what Title I is, and if our school does end up going that way, you know, perhaps a little bit about what we can expect with that. We're also going to give you guys an idea of some solutions that we think can be some alternatives to the proposals or the proposal that's been given to the school board. You know, it seems to me, and a lot of you, by looking at this proposal, that the Chisholm Trail is bearing the brunt of this change. Also, another school can alleviate their enrollment numbers. We think that we've come up with some good solutions with help from a lot of you. A lot of neighbors have reached out, contacted us, given opinions, solutions, any advice that they could to help further this cause. We think that we've got some good ones, and they're ones that achieve the goals that the district is trying to achieve, all while having minimal impacts, if any, on Chisholm Trail. So with that, Chad, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'll introduce myself.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit, and we're going to have a session of Q&A here at the end. So if you wouldn't mind holding your questions until then, we'll try to get everything answered towards the end. But we'll go through this presentation as it is, and try to give you all as much information as we can. Can you pull up the proposal? So this is the middle school attendance proposal. Now this proposal has been done by a demographer. This wasn't a proposal that was chartered out and made up by the school board or the administration themselves. They asked a third-party demographer to give them one proposal, to go out and grab the numbers, grab the statistics. You know, we need to alleviate attendance at this school. in this school ahead of opening up a new middle school, which is going to be Pearson Ranch over in Avery Ranch. And this proposal is what the demographer came back with. The board has a set of guiding principles that they use to make their decisions when trying to decide ultimately what these boundaries are going to be and what they're going to look like, who it's going to impact. So, safety of our students, vertical alignment, which is trying not to split up too many schools. So you have an elementary school, they get split up to go to two separate middle schools, and then they meet back up into the same high school. That's not good vertical alignment. We want to try to keep all those kids together throughout the different tiers of school that they go to. Demographic balance, so that would be they try to balance equitably. And some of you have seen that chart. There's what they call the economically disadvantaged, the free and reduced lunch students. They try to balance that, and of course we know, looking at the chart, it looks a little heavily weighted on Chisholm, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Hazardous routes, they're trying to adjust the boundaries in ways that are going to be the safest bus routes for kids. They prefer kids not to have to drive down the highway, cross major roads, or pass other schools for that matter, getting to their destination. Enrollment capacity, so you'll see things on here on actual numbers of students. You'll see things called utilization, and we'll kind of go over that. But in this whole proposal kind of hinges on enrollment capacity. They're trying to alleviate enrollment. They're overutilized, they're over-enrolled at Walsh Elementary or Middle School, in Cedar Valley Middle School, and then of course proximity. They want to try to keep these kids as close to their destination as they can. So, one key point here, you might have seen that, a couple key points. So they removed the whole east side conversation of the original proposal. Originally, Ridgeview Middle School over near Forest Creek, that's an overpopulated, overcrowded school as well. There's quite a big upheaval. They're going to split up parts of Forest Creek to send kids one way, send kids the other. And that ultimately got squashed by the time that board meeting came up when they read the proposal. It's focused on relieving Cedar Valley and Walsh and possibly impacting Chisholm Trail and Deer Park. It only impacts middle schools, so this entire proposal hinges only on middle schools. They're not redoing the boundaries for an elementary or high school at this point. High school areas would be addressed with high school number 6, so they've got a bond coming up. Part of that bond is to get money for high school number 6, which at this point they've decided that it's going to be next to Pearson Ranch. So there will be a high school coming up there's Elsa England, Pearson Ranch, and then high school number 6. It's all going to be in a row. October 20th, we'll get to that point. We'll talk a little bit about what the process is. Do we have a slide for the process? Probably not. I'll tell you what the process is. So at the September 15th board meeting, they read the proposal to the public. Now we are in the 16th through October 13th down here, where they're going to be in a review period. So these are these meetings that you see that are coming up. One is tomorrow at Cedar Valley Middle School, where the public we don't know what the format is yet, by the way. The public can come, voice their concerns. There's going to be a panel made up of generally administrators. Don't expect any school board to be on those panels. They may be in the audience here and there. They may be wearing disguises, I don't know. but we don't expect them to be on that panel. From what we've heard in the past, depending on what it is, they may have Q&A, but that also depends on how many speakers that they have coming, or people who want to, kind of voice their opinion. So that'll be September 21st at Cedar Valley, 28th at Chisholm Trail, and 29th at Walsh Middle School. October 20th, they will be, between that 29th of September and October 20th, they will be reviewing the boundaries as they have been, taking in that public feedback that they got, and trying to decide what changes they're going to make, if any, and they will have a final recommendation for the public on the 20th of October, and that leads us to the November 17th vote that the board will have. So once they get all the public input and that's over, it's pretty much at the board's discretion from there. There's no more input, there's no more changes that are going to be proposed to the public. There's no more, here we've adjusted this. Y'all take a look at it now, tell us what you think. This is it. So October 20th is when they finalize that plan, and then November 17th is when they're going to vote on it. Go ahead and go to the attendance slide, up one, to Chisholm map, please. Okay, I want to catch y'all up a little bit on the map and kind of what we're looking at here. Color's not great, but here along this is I-35 right here. Basically everything right here up and down this corridor is going to be zoned to Chisholm. Now these are not the current boundaries, but the proposed boundaries. Right here we've got Deepwood, we've got Chisholm Trail. Over here, Fern Bluff, Brushy Creek, and right over here is where Pearson Range is going to be. Right now, Chisholm Trail has Fern Bluff, Deepwood, and Bluebonnet that feed into it. We do currently get a little bit from down here, Wells Branch. So Joey Johnson is a brand new middle school that they opened up this year, and that split the kids from Wells Branch. So a lot of Wells Branch kids who are currently zoned to Deer Park got split off with Joey Johnson. Joey Johnson, they're proposing, will be all going to Chisholm Trail. Another area that they're adding north is, actually we'll get to that slide in a second. Right here is a huge change for us. This is the area that is throwing off the entire balance of what you see on that chart of economically disadvantaged. So the misconception right off the get-go is that they are thrusting a whole bunch of we'll just say ED students into Chisholm Trail. That's actually not the case. The number of ED kids we have now is relatively going to stay the same. The big swing in the pendulum comes because they're taking all of Fern Bluff out of Chisholm Trail. So they're talking about taking 338 students from the Oaklands, Fern Bluff, Stone Canyon area out of Chisholm Trail and shifting them over to Cedar Valley. And that's the real linchpin in this whole thing, is that by losing Fern Bluff, that swings us so far into the Title I territory. Chad, can you bring up the chart for me? Yes. So this is the chart in their district proposal. This shows a number of different things. Enrollment numbers at each one of these middle schools. This column is without Pearson Ranch Middle School, PRMS, the utilization rate that the campuses currently have, and that's their capacity. utilization and enrollment do not go by the same math, if you will. Basically, here, I'll tell you, Walsh should be going down roughly 16% in their student population, yet they're going down nearly 50% in their utilization. So they're getting a third of their school utilization relieved by taking out 16% of their students. Utilization is, you think about the space that they need. If you've got more kids coming in and they need to take over a computer lab to fill a classroom right there, your utilization goes up. The amount of space that you're able to use in school is that number. And so you can see Walsh is way over capacity at this point. And then the percentage of ED, which is economically disadvantaged. And so this is with and without Pearson Range Middle School. So for Chisholm Trail, right here, we're at 38. Now the number is 40% to be eligible to be classified as Title I. For a district to apply for Title I status, 40%. So we're close already. I don't know that we wouldn't make it there on our own. We might dip our toes in the water, but that's okay. But putting us so far into that percentage, it makes it it could be argued that it might make it a lot harder for us to recover and to get out of that. I mean, Title I may have some benefits, may have some disadvantages, but I don't think the district wants to have a Title I school. They don't want to have another Title I school. We don't want to have a Title I school. But with the way this neighborhood has changed and we're in a period of rejuvenation, I mean, there's a lot of young families coming in, and Deepwood's numbers are down right now. But I see those coming back, and I see those flowing into Chisholm, and Chisholm's numbers going up. We have a good chance, and we still have a good chance, but we don't need, in our opinion, the number to swing so heavily, just because some other schools up north, they need some enrollment relief. And we've got some solutions, as we'll talk about later, that we feel can alleviate, knock down that percentage at least, and alleviate the overcrowding that we're trying to avoid. Chad, we go to the slide so we can see where Old Town is a little bit better. So that's probably the Walsh slide. So right here, we're looking north a little bit more. This is Fern Bluff. This is the Oaklands here. And this area here is the new zoning for Chisholm Trail Middle School. This is Old Town Elementary, Cactus Ranch, Walsh, right here. So what they're doing, in addition to giving us those Wells Branch kids, is that they're taking all of the south side of Old Town. Currently, Old Town is the Woods neighborhood, Hermitage, all the way down Sam Bass, and up here, Hidden Glen, Wood Glen area. They're proposing that they split essentially part of the neighborhood of Old Town in half, and take that along with the Hermitage and push that down to Chisholm Trail. And as you'll see in Chad's part of the presentation for some solutions, there's a better way. There's a better way to get those kids where they need to go. I don't know if they can avoid moving. The fact is that all of this hinges around Walsh and Cedar Valley being overcrowded, and those are the problems that have to be solved. So with that, probably going to dish over to Chad. He's going to talk to you. Well, actually, you know what? What we're going to do first, we're going to talk to Krista Kumara. She is a Title I principal. She's at Callison Elementary. Y'all may have seen, if y'all watched the school board meeting this past Thursday, she was recognized by the board. Very knowledgeable. She has an extensive background in education. And she's going to come up here, and we're going to ask her a few questions and help understand a little bit more about Title I, what we're facing, and hopefully get kind of a better vantage point of some things that we're looking at. Krista, you want to come up? If you could just introduce yourself a little bit. Yeah, you can take that and flip on the switch there. Introduce yourself a little bit and maybe start off. Is it working?
I think so.
Good. Start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what it's like to be a principal at a Title I school.
Sorry, excuse my appearance. I just came from working out, and I came as a community member and as a friend. I have worked in Title I campuses for the past 4 years as an assistant principal and now currently as a principal. My school does have, and as Ryan was saying, you have to reach 40% economically disadvantaged to be considered a Title I school. My school is currently at 64% economically disadvantaged. We have about 850 students. So we have a pretty large campus with a pretty varied demographic. Some things about Title I, you have to, again, reach that percentage rate, and looking at the maps and not really knowing too much about what's going on. Ryan explained it very well. The first was an initial proposal that the demographer brought to the board. That was the first time the board saw it, and they're really going, we as a district are going to listen to those public hearings, the ideas, the suggestions, to take back to the decision in October to make that final determination. So when you go to those boards, bring your voice, but make sure that you keep it very positive as a community, because ultimately we're talking about children here. We're talking about what we're providing for them, and what Title I provides to a community is equality and equity for all students. I used to work at Cactus Ranch, which again is a highly affluent community. Our PTA raised $200,000 in one fundraiser. Currently at my school, we're excited for $2,000. You know, so the types of parents that are involved and the types of community that we're in, that $200,000 would go to paying for resources in the classroom, buying Promethean boards, buying computer programs and books and field trips. Whereas my campus, if we were solely relying on those PTA funds, we wouldn't have those things. And so what Title I does is it provides an equitable education for all students. And it provides us with resources. The majority of Title I resources goes to employees. We have 3 Title I employees on our campus, and they serve as interventionists. We also have educational assistants or paraprofessionals on our campus that are all funded by Title I funds. So that is the majority of our title funds right there. The remainder of our title funds, and we have, as a principal, I have to write a very detailed plan of my use of title funds, and it can only be used for certain things. One being human resources, second being professional development for my teachers. And so whereas again, I'm going to compare myself to Cactus Ranch, we would have extensive resources to provide training, capturing kids' hearts. I was training that the entire staff of Cactus Ranch completed. That is $400 per person, per teacher. We had 100 teachers on our campus, so imagine $400 times 100. That's a pretty good chunk of money to develop and train teachers. And if I were just relying solely on PTA funds, my campus would not be able to do that. But Capturing Kids' Hearts is a program that is very recognized in the district. It's something that we are encouraged to train our staff in, and so I'm able to do that through Title I funds. This past week, I sent my 4th grade teachers to a Jeff Anderson training at Region 13. That was $151 per person. I use my Title I funds in order to train my teachers. So that is what Title does. Title I money gives me funding to make sure that my teachers are trained. I have equitable resources on my campus. I have Promethean boards in every classroom. I have Mimios for all my students. I have computers and laptop carts. And I don't have to rely on PTA funds or family funds to do those things. Again, I'm very tied to what I use my funds for, and I have a very strict budget, and I have to turn that into my Title I coordinator, who then passes it to the board for approval, and then ultimately the superintendent. And no, it is not the district's goal to have a district full of Title I schools. And looking at that proposal, that's a pretty hefty chunk of kids that you're losing. But ultimately, these kids are already ours. They're already in your zone. What we're doing is we're just taking away a good chunk of those kids. And I don't know that it would be, that I cannot guarantee, but I think that with your voice and ultimately with Dr. Flores, his recognition, and he recognizes that those numbers are very high, I don't think that he would allow it to get there. And I was in a meeting with him today, and he was kind of discussing the bond and how it's been going, and I got to introduce myself at the board meeting where there were more individuals than have ever been at any board meeting, and so that was very nerve-wracking for me. But it just shows that we have a very passionate community of people, very passionate about their students and their child's education. And he recognizes that, and that's why he has these open forums, so that he can listen to that feedback. And so I'm kind of interested to see what the alternative plan is. But if there's any questions about Title I will try to answer it to the best of my ability.
I'll ask you a couple questions right off the bat. Is it the district that decides to apply for Title I, and at what point do they generally do that? So if 40% is the number where you're eligible, do they generally file for that as soon as they can?
Yes, they don't have to apply. It's not like a grant where you have to write a grant proposal. Once your demographic reaches the 40%, then you qualify nationally, federally for those funds, and then that's when you have your Title I plan that you have to turn into the state.
Okay, and you said the district wouldn't want a bunch of Title I schools, so one of the misconceptions or things that are going around is that the district wants the school to be a Title I so they can get that money.
That money goes straight back to the school. So it's not like fund money where the district gets to play with it. The federal government really, they look down and they scrutinize every single penny. I can't use that money to buy snacks for tutoring. I mean, it comes down to the very penny of how I use my money. So as far as the district wanting just some extra cash to be able to pay for something, that money just doesn't exist. That money goes directly back to the schools to pay for professional development and professionals.
Okay. And, yes.
I have a question. This Title I, when I'm getting the picture, the state or the government is paying for this?
Yes, Title is a federal program.
This does not come out of property taxes or anything like that?
Correct. Title I is nationally funded.
It's got nothing to do with the ISD, Round
No, ma'am.
ISD?
None of that title money comes from any of the boundary or tax, property taxes. That's federal funding.
If you get it.
Yes, sir.
So, trying to think this how far back it was. My kids went to Deepwood and they started when they were kindergarten and first grade because we transferred here from Austin. And they were behind a little bit at the time. So in the summer, they went to summer school, which was called Title I exempt. Back then, this was back in the late 70s. Was that the same program?
It probably was the same type of funding, and since we do have tax, let me kind of break it down. So my school is a full program. We have a full title program, so the entire school receives the benefits of that funding. Some schools, which I'm assuming you have a certain amount of economically disadvantaged students, those students specifically receive some level of funding within the campus already. And that funding can be used for summer school programs. It can be used, we use some for pre-K programs. We have a pre-K kinder dual language program that is offered every summer, and also that summer school program that is paid for through title funds for all the students within the district.
At the time my kids were going, they weren't economically disadvantaged.
Right.
So I don't understand how they even got into the program, other than we just asked because, or they said, your kids are behind, this would help them at the time. I'm not disappointed in it because it did help, but I'm just saying, back then, my kids weren't disadvantaged from the economic standpoint.
And back then, they may have had some different restrictions or guidelines for the spending. I know currently, we would have to use that money differently. We don't offer summer school anymore except for students who haven't passed the 5th grade test in middle school and high school. So summer school is no longer offered by the district, so maybe that's why we no longer receive the funding for that.
You mentioned that the district doesn't want a school to go Title I, and they don't benefit, the district doesn't benefit from the Title I funds. Why would they not want a school to go Title I?
Not that they don't want it, I just don't think that that's their ultimate goal. I don't think they sit there and we, as a district, I don't think we sit there and look at schools and try to create schools that are Title I. That initial plan was created by a demographer who has no connection with our district. He was strictly looking at numbers, he was looking at hazardous routes, he was looking at very specific things to create those boundaries. And so then as we put the actual human lens on it, when we put district employees looking into it, when we put community members looking at it, that's when those boundaries begin to change. So when I say they don't want to be it, what I meant is we don't sit there and intentionally create title schools. It's not that we don't want them, it's just that it's not intentionally created.
Please, sir, anybody?
Can you discuss some of the challenges you see at the Title I school? I mean, you talked about Cactus Ranch having all the parent support. Obviously, don't have that support. Kids are coming in hungry. Parents are worried about a job and other things to where they're not helping them with their homework. You're saying you can help your teachers get extra training, but if they're spending the majority of their time with that student, how is it equitable to the other students?
And that's a great question to ask. If your school does become a Title I school, that's a great question to ask your school leaders. How do you guarantee differentiation among my children? How do you guarantee that my child is being seen as far as, and even that lowest performing child? That's a school leader's job, and that's our district leader's job, is to ensure equitable education for everyone. And so I can speak to what I do at my school, but ultimately it has to be what your school leaders, and I know that you have a new principal coming in at both the elementary and the middle school level, and so when you sit in, or if you have that availability and time to sit in on those discussions of the principal selection, those are great questions to ask, and how can you ensure that every child, high and low and in between, are getting their needs met?
Charlie?
Definition of economically disadvantaged.
What is the definition of economically disadvantaged?
So again, that's a federal regulation or federal qualification. For example, a family of 4 would have to live in a household within the income of $24,000 a year. That would mean
Just based on the last census.
so a family of 4 would have to live under an annual income of $24,000 a year.
I mean,
So
how old is the data? Is it from the last census?
each year they update the requirements. So they show the number of people living in the household, and next to it you can look it up online, and then the annual income that you have to bring in order to qualify. And so the way that parents qualify is a free and reduced lunch application. Every student at the beginning of the year has that opportunity to have a free and reduced lunch application. And if parents qualify, then that student is considered economically disadvantaged. So that's how they get those numbers and those statistics. So it depends on how many people, number 1, have applied for free and reduced lunch, and number 2, who have qualified for free and reduced lunch at your campus. But in order to qualify, the parents have to provide their bank statement or their paycheck to show how much they make in a year.
Yes, ma'am, back there.
How quick is the turnaround time when you submit your proposal for Title I money? How quick is the turnaround time to the time you get your money?
It takes a really long time. So they project in May what I will be receiving, and I just received my funding in September. So from May to September, my money is going to be, so I get my money for the rest of the year. Yes.
So, am I missing the point, or did they intentionally make Round Rock a Title I, this area a Title I school?
No,
intentionally.
this was created by a demographer, an outside contracted person. And so
who do they report to, and who are they that made this area a Title I school?
the contractor brought this to the board last week. So that was the first time that our board was able to see the plan.
Okay, and where's this contractor from?
They put bids out to several, it's just like the bid process for any company that works for the district. They have a bidding opportunity that they apply for, and the district looks at several different companies before they use the funds to.
So we pay tax money to find out that we're going to be disadvantaged.
Tax money does go to the demographer to create a plan, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I need.
Yes, ma'am.
So my understanding is right, by taking Fern Bluff kids out, are we taking the property tax money out of that district as well? That money's no longer then available to Chisholm Trail?
Well, that's a separate thing. The property tax that they pay in the school district, they're still paying into the school district.
It's not per school.
It's not school specific.
What's that?
Okay.
Do you feel that, being the principal of a Title I school, do you think it affects like your teacher recruitment or retention at all? Like especially having lower rates of parent involvement?
I think it all depends on the school leader, truly I do. I've worked at Paulo Heights, which has 40% economically disadvantaged, to Callis Elementary, which has 64% economically disadvantaged. I have a higher teacher retention rate currently at Callison with a higher level of economically disadvantaged students. I hire teachers that love the kids, and the teachers that work for me, they know that we're here for the kids, and they will do anything for our students. And they work hard, and they dedicate their time after school, and they dedicate their time on the weekends. And it's the type of teachers that, when we're interviewing, it's part of that interview process of how I retain my teachers. It's the quality of teachers that I'm looking for initially. So I think it all has to do with the school culture is driven by your school leaders.
What are the passing rates for the kids in each of the classes in your Title I school compared to those at a non-Title I school in the district?
We have a lower passing rate. We have met all standards. We have passed all standards of the state test. They're not at 90% like Canyon Creek or Cactus Ranch, but we have all students passing. We have met all the standards of passing for the state distinctions.
We've got time for a few more questions. Yes, ma'am.
Having taught at a Title I school, I'm not teaching now, I've taught for 30 years. Having taught at Title I schools, there's a couple of things I agree with you, that the overhead, the authority who's in place has a significant input and feel of what happens and what goes on. Number two, because of children who are in those homes and parents have a whole lot more worry about life and jobs and providing, they have less time and less effort and less energy to put into working with their kids for homework, which is why we have some of the lower level grades. Also, with that, as a teacher, we were expected to add extra time in the morning to come in early to tutor. We were expected to stay later in the afternoon to tutor. We were expected to, our school was partly, not all the kids had lunches, but and free qualified for that, but when they went to the entire school, we were expected to come in early, and we were expected to serve all of the students breakfast every morning. And that was just more burden on us. Not that we were not necessarily willing to do it, but it kind of came on after the fact, and we were not prepared to do that. And so there's a lot of factors that goes into this whole process of teacher recruitment, what you're saying, knowing what they're getting into and knowing what's expected, and being able to provide the extra tutoring and the extra one-on-one time that these children need, because they don't get it at home when you've got 2 or 3 families living in a situation in one home and nobody's watching out for the kids. So.
It is, it's hard. And before I go, I just want to say that when you do go to those board meetings, that you remember these are children. They're children that are already in your schools. They're not adding children to your school. They're children that are already there currently. And people, I went to a Title I school when I was growing up. I'm a principal now. Dr. Flores went to a Title I school. He is a superintendent now. So as you have these conversations, and as you think of those labels or the misconceptions, think about the opportunities as well as the negatives. But as you approach the school board and as you talk to them, just remember those things, that ultimately this is about children, and keep those conversations positive, and you're more likely to be heard.
If anybody else has any questions, please get with me afterwards, and I'll make sure that they get to Krista and get those questions answered. But let's all give Krista a round of applause. We're going to pass it off to Chad. Chad's going to come up and give us some solutions to the current proposal.
Thanks, Aaron. So just real quickly to introduce myself, my parents actually moved to Round Rock from North Austin because of the school boundary issue. When things were being redrawn there, they want the same thing. I'm a parent. I've got a kid at Deepwood and one coming in next year. So I've got 2 kids there. And I'm a parent just like a lot of y'all in this room. And I want what's best for my kids. I also want what's best for every kid in the district as well. So I think, we're trying to find common ground. We're trying to find alignment with the board and with other neighborhoods being affected. So I think we do want to keep all that in mind as well. One of the things that Ryan, can you go to the next slide? Yes, thank you. Was that confusing?
I just don't know how to use the Mac, so.
You're getting a Dell, man. Okay, so basically, when we just heard about this news, this stuff is flowing, it's unfolding very quickly. We're getting new information every day from the district as they're taking feedback. They're publishing new information to their website. And so we're consuming that as fast as we can. When I first heard about this, it was through the Facebook group from Ryan's post, alerting everybody to the changes that were coming. I was immediately concerned. I do not work for the district. I'm just a parent, and my father's in real estate. We've been around real estate our whole lives. I can tell you there's a stigma to the Title I label. A lot of families moving in, they'll look at, the first thing they're going to look at is location and schools. And they're going to look at the schools in your district. They're going to look at the test scores. They're going to look at if there's a Title I designation, and a lot of families are just going to go to the next neighborhood. So that was where my initial concern was. We brought up Krista because we wanted a balanced viewpoint. I wanted to hear both sides. I may have some biases, right? So we wanted to hear both sides. I think it's, how we're coming to this is I immediately knew. I started reading online. I looked at past redistrictings in Round Rock. I looked at the transcripts. I watched video presentations that were given leading up to this proposal, and I knew immediately what we wanted to do was we needed to focus on providing alternative solutions. If we didn't like the proposal that was being put out there, it wasn't going to do any good just to get upset. And just say, I don't want this, that's not gonna do it. What we need to do is focus on a solution, and we do need to find alignment with the board and other neighborhoods, and we also need to be aligned with all, what's best for all the students. So if you look at the proposal that we went over earlier, the key points for me are we need to start with the goals that the board has set out. And the major goals that they have set out is they need to fill Pearson Ranch. It's the new middle school opening up in August. That's an imperative. They had to relieve overcrowding at Walsh and Cedar Valley. I was alarmed when I saw that Walsh was at 150% utilization. I can only imagine the crowding in the hallways, and that's a big issue. They also set forth, they provided those 6 guiding principles that we discussed earlier. They provided those to the demographer, and the demographer comes with all the quantitative data, the number of kids in the school. They look at growth rates, the 2 to 3 year projections, all the way out to 10-year projections. And their job was to take that data, apply the guiding principles, and present a single proposal. That was what the board requested that they do last night. So that is what they did. I found it a little interesting on the presentation on Thursday where the board immediately tried to distance itself from that proposal. They immediately said, we don't like this either. But our solution, if you get back to what are those key goals that they're trying to solve, and then how much data can we get to try to come up with an alternative that accomplishes their goals, but also weighs in the values that we hold, that we want for our community as well. Next slide. So one of the other highlights of the board meeting last week is that some of the other neighborhoods, representation from the Woods, which is the neighborhood just to the south of Walsh Ranch, that would be bused across 620 Chisholm Trail. They spoke in opposition to the plan. We have connected with the current PTA president for Chisholm Trail Middle School and the past president for Chisholm Trail are both moms from Fern Bluff. And when I began to listen to them speak, what I realized is that we all actually want the same thing. We are all very aligned with the outcome that we're looking for. We may differ on the reasons we want those things, but we all agreed on that we want the same solution. And so what we immediately began to do is open lines of communication to these other neighborhoods. And so we're actually actively trying to build support across these various neighborhoods so it doesn't look just like this is a solution that fits around our West needs. No, we're trying to find a solution that fits everyone's needs and gain the widest support possible. And also, again, restating, we're also trying to align to the board itself. We don't, I want to reiterate this as much as possible, and I've seen this coming from some of the other presentations that were done to the board, is it does no good for us to just stand in opposition of the board in front of them. We were actually very aligned with the board. The plan that I'm about to discuss, I think actually does a better job of aligning to their own guiding principles than the current proposed plan does. I think, honestly, it's a no-brainer if we all just get and support it. But, okay, next slide. Okay, so the pillars of our plan is we want to avoid the Title I designation. We want to, and I want to speak about that just a little bit deeper. Every parent I've talked to, they chose to live here for largely some of the same reasons that I chose to move back here and raise my own family. By the way, I went to all these schools, Deepwood, Chisholm, and Round Rock. I brought my own family back to raise them because I had a great experience here. You saw Chisholm Trail's numbers. We're at 38% economically disadvantaged today. We are not at this school. We are at this school because we value diversity. We value everybody should get a good education for everyone. Quite honestly, like if you just look at test scores, you would probably look at Westlake or Westwood. We talked to parents from those schools as well, and we decided that we wanted a more balanced education for our children. Those schools hammer academic performance above all else, almost to the detriment of a lot of the kids. This is my opinion. This is just Chad speaking. Okay, and that we just didn't feel that was right for our kid. We wanted a more balanced, sports, and we wanted community involvement and academics, and we wanted, to have a wide group of friends and social network from, all walks of life. So we already have that at Chisholm Valley. What we're trying to say is, if you take some of the economically disadvantaged from Walsh and Cedar Valley and channel those to Chisholm Trail and move the Fern Bluff kids to Chisholm Valley, they are actually working against demographic balance, which is one of their guiding principles. those schools are going from, I think, 9%, Walsh is at 9%, they're going down to 7%. And Cedar Valley is going from 12% down to 11% with the current proposed plan. And Chisholm is going from 38 up to 51. So again, so the pillars of our plan, we have to present something that focuses on utilization, because the overcrowding is, they explicitly stated, that is their number one goal. We have to address the overcrowding at those two schools, and we have to fill Pearson Ranch. And then the gist of our proposal is basically, if you look at it, there's an alternate way you can route those students to where you can just leave Chisholm alone and not affect Chisholm at all. Which, this is not part of their guiding principles, but we feel that it should be something that we do value, which is when you move a student, there's a number of issues. If I move a student who's in the 7th grade, and I move them from one middle school to another, they may have an older sibling who's at the high school or at the middle school, and they're basically splitting families up. You're moving kids who have established social networks and friendships at one school to another, and they have to immediately reestablish all those friendships. I mean, it's very disruptive. We can all agree with that. And so one of the values I think we should be holding higher is affecting as few families as possible whenever we're considering redrawing boundary lines. And so our plan does that. And then the last pillar is we need to show support for this plan across neighborhoods. So in addition to our own neighborhood, I can't bring this point home I can't emphasize this enough. It's that a plan is just a plan on a piece of paper that does really nothing. If we don't get behind it and show our support and say, hey, we want this, then it just is lost, right? So a key pillar of our plan is actually forming that coalition across the other neighborhoods, getting those neighborhoods on board with the plan that we're proposing, and then like we're doing tonight is mobilizing our own community to get behind the plan as well. So let's dig in a little deeper, and I want to preface this by saying we're getting information like in real time. So some of these numbers that I'm about to show, we just received yesterday afternoon. So this is going to continue to evolve before our meeting at Chisholm on the 28th. So they just yesterday, based on feedback, and if we weren't telling them what we wanted, they wouldn't have done this, right? So we have to be vocal, we have to tell them, but we got to do it in the right way. They gave us a new map that showed these green numbers, and these are the numbers of kids that would be affected from each neighborhood, okay? So what you can do then is add all these numbers up, and if you look at this is the Fern Bluff boundary line that would be affected. This is the Oaklands and those neighborhoods just north, in Fern Bluff, those neighborhoods just north of 620. And I put this number here, there's 338 kids we're talking about. That's probably a third of Chisholm Trail. And those are all economically advantaged kids. And I didn't even think about the angle earlier that Krista brought up, which is like your PTA involvement and being able to raise $200,000 at a single fundraiser. A lot of that goes away, right? If you bring this whole neighborhood out. Okay, so you would need Title I dollars at that point, just to offset that. Here is the part of the woods and the Hermitage that they're talking about busing down to Chisholm Trail. Those kids are currently at Walsh. Okay, so they're going from a 9% ED school down to a 51%. They're getting bused across 620 would be the route, which is, in times of traffic, it's a major road, a lot of wrecks. That goes directly against the hazardous route guiding principle. There's 171 kids that they're talking about affecting with that change. And here is an area that is also south of 3406, feeds into Walsh, but they're currently not proposing that they affect. I added those numbers up just to see what it was. We're talking 96, and I think, it's around 260 total if you look at both of those neighborhoods. Because if we take Fern Bluff back to Chisholm Trail, we need to offset this 338 number to help with their balancing the utilization rates. So if you add those up, we're pretty close. If you can show me the last slide, and the next slide. All right, so here I showed, it doesn't do us any good if we're, basically the gist of my proposal is, the kids that they're talking about that are currently at Walsh, they have to relieve Walsh. These kids are gonna move anyway. If you just look at where Walsh is located, there's no other place to grab kids from and neighborhoods from than south of 3406. These kids are gonna move. They're either gonna move to Chisholm, or the alternative is they move them to Cedar Valley. And if you look at this, I use Google Maps very quickly, and the routes are way better. You come through Wyoming Springs if you send those kids to Cedar Valley versus sending them down 620. I think that move makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons. Those parents are happy they're in Cedar Valley. They're not being bused across the hazardous route. It helps balance the numbers. It, most importantly, it relieves the pressure that they had at Walsh, which is one of their #1 goals. Next slide. Okay. So, ultimately, I think that the very specifics of the plan that we're proposing, that is evolving in real time, I don't think is the most critical factor. I think explaining to the board in a positive way the things that we value and showing support for that and saying these are the variables I think you ought to be playing with and looking at, and then leaving it to them to decide the final details of that, I think is the right approach. And I think with y'all's involvement, that's really what tonight is about, is the call to action to get people involved and rally. And in our closing remarks, we'll talk about some specific asks that we have to help show support. And with that, we'll open it up to Q&A about that.
Who's presenting this tomorrow night at Cedar Valley? Are y'all going to talk about
So tomorrow night, we kind of have an advantage here. There's a lot of unknowns about how the presentations are going to go. So the 3 public hearings is what we're talking about. The first one of which is tomorrow night at Cedar Valley. We are going to attend and observe. So we're really getting geared up for our Chisholm Trail. There's the Chisholm Trail meeting next Wednesday. So really it's about attending and observing this.
Let me interject real quick. There's part of this plan as well that there's a lot of fallbacks and a lot of areas to land that we can also incorporate some other things that we can negotiate with, essentially. One of those things, chatting with kids, taking those kids, those boys, turning those kids over to Cedar Valley. A lot better bus route. Works better with guys in front of kids, but also those kids that are down south from us, those Wells Branch and Joey Johnson kids. There's an opportunity to push the board in a direction to put those kids back over to Deer Park. Because the way they're set up right now is they've got Wells Branch was severely overcrowded. Joey and Joey Johnson split those kids up. So now the way they Wells Branch is the Wells Branch kids, for most of them, they're going to Deer Park, while the kids, the Joey kids, and the same kids are going to Chisholm. They're all leaving back to McNeil. So part of this is that we may be able to use that as well to help offset Chisholm's offset Chisholm's numbers.
So, right, there is another factor. We're talking about 20 kids on the south side of town. You could open up with, if you're in a negotiation, you can open up with, don't change anything, and then that could be a gift, right? It's like, okay, we'll help your alignment issues and bring those 20 kids as a material. It doesn't materially affect our numbers at all. So, so there's some variables down there to play with and what they can do then.
I'm a little confused about what happens if we're not a Title I school. What happens to that 38% of the kids that are economically disadvantaged? Do they not get any of the funding?
They don't get Title I. They don't get Title I funding. But if you listen to what Chris has said, a lot of the funding. Look at the real purpose. Look at the real purpose of Title I. Right? Walsh can raise $200,000. That money goes directly to paying for programs and books and technology and those things, right? If you don't have parents who are willing or able to raise those kind of funds, they still need to pay for those. They still want to be able to pay for those plans. That's the purpose of Title I. So what we're saying, it's kind of a wash, right? What we're saying is it's going to take all the families and the people raising those funds away. Then we're going to have to the state just, the federal government is going to have to give you those funds.
I thought Title I also included like food for kids.
They still get that food. They get free reduced lunch, everybody in the district.
Like they're not getting, the kids will get, they're not going to be disadvantaged. The 38% is not going to be disadvantaged.
You actually have a better advantage because you have kids parents that are coming in and raising money that can help do things for the school that otherwise the state has. They're saying what we need to do with this.
Right. If you look at test scores, there's a direct correlation between this, what we're talking about, and test scores, and all these programs. And I mean, I know from my own experience, if you're in a better classroom where the kids are paying attention and their parents are involved and their test scores are high, it causes you to
Okay, for clarification, what I understood Ryan to say was that right now they're at 30%, 38%, but they have to be at 40% to qualify for Title I. So the 38%, if it stays 38%, then the school doesn't get Title I assistance. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what's wrong with leveling it out? If nobody gets 38% or 40% or whatever, and you give some of those kids to Cactus Ranch, and you give some of those kids to Cedar Valley, and my daughter and my wife are both teachers, and there's ESL, special ed, on level, gifted and talented. There's level 2 classes all the time. Why do we not level it all out across Round Rock? Why do we have to be designated as a Title I school? Title I district.
Remember, so the 6 guiding principles, some of those are vertical alignment, proximity, hazardous routes. All these are reasons why you can't just, send this neighborhood way across town and here to get perfect balance, right? So they're trying to weigh a lot of different variables. And
I can ride my bike to Cactus Ranch.
You can, but all these kids.
And I'm a fat boy. I can still ride a bike to Cactus Ranch.
Yeah, and that's a thought, but then you gotta ask, what's the best thing for the kids? Is it the best thing for the kids to shuffle them around equitably throughout all the schools in the district, just so everybody's got a fair level of economically disadvantaged kids?
It's all about diversity and growing up, and
That's why we like Chisholm the way it is, because it has diversity.
I'm good with it.
Chad, if the kids go to Cedar Valley, what does that do to their ED rate?
So like I said, they gave us the numbers of kids per neighborhood yesterday. What we don't have is to know per neighborhood what percentage of those are economically disadvantaged. So there's no way I can give you that answer right now. But what I can tell you is they're not going to shoot past 40%. They're starting from a base of 12.
But you might have to use Cedar Valley to align a coalition too. If they see those kids headed their way, I can see them what's going on there.
I didn't understand.
Well, you were talking about like you've got Fern Bluff, if Cedar Valley gets some kids, it's raising their economically disadvantaged percentage. Maybe they need to be in the coalition and understand.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, we could widen the coalition to more people, and you know, telling like every day, hey, did you hear so and so, and like shoot them an email. I found a petition on Nextdoor. I shot an email.
Rumors just go crazy, and all of a sudden Cedar Valley goes, oh my God, all this deal, and these kids are coming our way, and they get.
Yeah, but you know, they've got a tough argument. I think they would have a tough argument.
But I mean, just letting them know the numbers ahead of time, so they're going, yeah, we're all for it, yeah.
When you had the Google Maps up, you had the 10 minutes, kids coming from, say, that 7-Eleven on Sandbags, going over to the Cedar Valley is a 10-minute drive, and then a 9-minute drive, which is, but if you look at that in reality, I know that's a Google thing, you know, here's the distance, here's the speed limit. But in reality, in the morning and in the evening, you're bringing those kids in the morning at 7:45, you're taking those kids from that 7-Eleven, and they're crossing the train tracks twice, the rock train, which may be there a long time or may not. Anytime there's any problem on the interstate that time in the morning, Chisholm Trail, the road they show the bus coming down, it's just sitting still, it's just a parking lot. So if we look at hazardous routes, yeah, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, no, we can do 45 minutes, 10 minutes. That's a much cleaner route over the Cedar Valley.
Absolutely.
They're going to start tearing up 620 and redoing that Chisholm Trail route any day. And that 9 minutes is going to go to 90 minutes.
That was my comment, because TxDOT is moving forward to doing that 620 expansion. I live in Little Oak, that subdivision, and they have done the appraisals for my neighbors last week. They have about a 90-day, 120-day buyout, and they're going to start utility movement with construction to start in 2017. So according to your maps, that definitely makes the 620 corridor right there very hazardous, because the construction's going to get worse before it ever gets better.
Okay. Ryan. I want to flip. So we wanted to make a closing remark. I know a lot of y'all, we need to respect your time and we all need to get going. So Q&A, we will stay as long as we need to. Ryan, you want to give your closing remarks, and then we can stay for Q&A after that?
Sure thing. So moving forward here, you know, I've said 1,000 times, this is complicated. This is very, very complicated. This is not like Eastside Ridgeview, where it's a pretty black and white situation that they were facing and they took off the table. There are a lot of variables in this whole plan that they put forth. I mean, it's all the boundaries, all the schools, all the lack of infrastructure. I mean, we're hurt over here where we're at, because we are right up against 35, and what do we have just to the west of us? We got a big ranch with no access. So 620 is a mode of transportation that they're trying to keep kids off of. But this is a complicated issue, and there's a lot of facets to it. But as Chad said, if we can bring them a solution that hits on those guiding principles that they're trying to govern by, that's the best chance we have. Not going up, anybody can go up and say your piece, but as a group, as a solution to go up with solutions, not with emotion, not with problems, not throwing it in their lap and say, we don't like this, you fix it. So I want to get to a little bit about what y'all can do to help us kind of further this cause. We've been holding off on a petition for our neighborhood for a little while. There's a lot of petitions out there. There's a lot of knee-jerk reactions from a lot of neighborhoods and people just throwing something out there just because they're mad. We wanted to put out a petition that aligns with a solution and then present it and have the neighborhood as a whole get behind it and take that and get the coalition of neighborhoods behind it. Like Chad said, all our neighborhoods want the same thing. We all want them for different reasons, but strength in numbers is what we're trying for. So there's going to be a petition coming out We'll link it up, Facebook page, all that kind of stuff. You know, those of you who put your email addresses out, we can certainly send it out to y'all. Mike will be sending out through the neighborhood blast that he does. There's also an online survey that you can go on the district website and fill out. The district has asked people to give their feedback through a survey. So instead of going rogue and emailing every single board member something that you're not happy about, you know, just inundating them with hate mail or opinions, let's give them feedback in the way they ask for. And let's do it in a big way. Let's get as many people as we can. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, and give the feedback that you are opposed to this plan. If you want to throw out solutions, throw out solutions. If you want to use this one as a united front, please do that. But the more people that we can get to respond to the survey and put it in, it's real quick. It's really quick. I think that'll give us a much better chance. These hearings that are coming up, there's a number of us that are going to go to all of them. We want to learn and figure out what the best, if we're missing something, what the format is, you know, if there's anything that we can add to further our case that we want to find out. So if you're going, especially the Chisholm one, wear red, okay? Let's show everybody that we are here and we are a force. It's psychological. Let's show them that we're here in a big way and that we are opposed and we are watching what they're doing.
And we're organized.
We're organized.
That's what politicians respond to.
I pulled this out of the closet. This is an original 1994 Chisholm Trail basketball shirt. I was on the C team, and I'm proud of it. I still play ball like I'm on the C team.
It takes all types, man.
That's right. And like we said for this meeting, you know, if you go to those other meetings, bring 3 neighbors. Just bring people, just show numbers of force. You know, we've got a great story in this neighborhood. I mean, there's guys like Chad, guys like me, John Blake
Olsen,
Alice Anchorage, all grew up here, all went to Deepwood, and Chisholm, and Round Rock High School, and we have decided, we made a decision to bring our families back to raise them here because we love this neighborhood. We are diverse. We are a great culture. We are the biggest voting constituency in the city. We have power, and we can use it. I'm always amazed and not at the same time, but that how fast we can mobilize, how much we care. There's all different types in this neighborhood, and we can always all come together for a common goal. So let's go out there, let's show our numbers, let's get together, and let's stop the school district from completely potentially wrecking, that's my soapbox, wrecking what we've built. We've all built Chisholm Trail. We've all been there. We've all had a stake in it. We still do. Let's keep them from passing the proposed plan that's out there. So with that, we really appreciate you guys showing up, being supportive, giving us suggestions. If anybody has questions, we'll stick around for them. But otherwise, class is dismissed.